You have to take the plea deal, Michael, I shouted at him from across the table. I can't. No, I won't, he said softly, while sobbing and rocking back and forth in the chair. Look, man, I don't see another option. Take the deal, and we will try to get you a life sentence. Do good on the inside, and hell, you'll be out in like 20 years. I was trying to remain composed, but he wasn't being rational. I continued to convince him. We can say it was a crime of passion, and you temporarily lost control of yourself. Come on, man, what do you think? He held his head down, but stared up at me sheepishly through his squinted, teary eyes. I didn't want to push him anymore, given the mess he had already been through. But it was coming down to the wire at that point. Stan, you're my friend, right? He asked me. You know I am, but right now, I'm your attorney. The same attorney that's trying to make this easy for you. He stopped crying and wiped the drool from his chin and stared directly into my eyes. You didn't even ask me what happened, Stan. I tried the entire time to not go down that road. It was my job to help make sure that this man was treated fairly during the trial, so I definitely didn't want to hear what really happened. It would only make it more difficult. Listen to me, I don't need to hear what happened. I already know. Katie is dead, and you did it. It's that simple. Now come on, let's get this going. Hearing the words, "you did it," physically materialize temporarily made Michael look rational. I guess the thought of what he actually did was sinking in finally. That look quickly faded though, and he went back to staring blankly into my eyes. He shook his head, tears staining his cheeks, and spoke through clenched teeth. I didn't do what you think. Come on, Mike. I deal with assholes for a living, and all of them say the same goddamn thing to me. I'm not hearing this. Now you either sign this plea or find another goddamn attorney. Jesus, man, just let me help you. I slammed my finger on the paper and shook my head at him in disgust. I wasn't there to hear the reason. It wasn't Katie. With her name coming out of his mouth, he began to cry hysterically. What are you talking about? You're not making sense. You don't know. No one knows. It wasn't her, damn it. Katie wasn't there. He shouted in my face, spit flying from his mouth. That was it. I couldn't do it. It was bad enough to try represent a friend. On top of that, he was being delusional. The absolute worst type of person to defend in a courtroom full of people that already hated him before the trial even began. I got up, shook my head at him, and turned towards the door. As I was waiting on the guard to open it, he said something that sent shivers down my spine and confused me even more. Stan? She was crawling on the ceiling. As he finished the sentence, I whipped around to face him. He looked like he was moments away from vomiting. No tears, no sobbing, an absolute serious expression. I didn't know what to say. Who the hell would? As the guard turned the door lock, I waved him off and sat back down. The man who sat merely feet in front of me, the person I had known for the better part of 20 years, had just said something that shook me to the core of my own existence. I slowly, methodically inquired, Mike, what did you just say to me? He instantly began sobbing even more, but not the same as before. No. He looked frightened. Oh man, I woke up and saw Katie on the ceiling. I'm not lying, Stan. She was hanging there, staring back at me. Her eyes were black. He was visibly unnerved by the telling of his own tale. I had no earthly idea how to deal with what I had just heard. Given this man had murdered someone, didn't mean he was a liar. He had never been before this. I did the only thing that I could rationally think of and cautiously asked him to tell what exactly happened. I know this sounds insane. Trust me, I understand. But she has been not herself for like a week. First, she was being really aggressive towards me, but then she started acting really strange. He trailed off, recounting the events in his mind and staring 1,000 yards past me into the abyss. I knocked the table with my knuckles and said, "Strange how?" "I heard her the other night in the bathroom. I walked in and she was talking to herself, man. But I didn't understand the words. It didn't even sound like her voice. She was facing the wall, mumbling and..." He was drifting again, completely confused, yet perplexed. I shouted, "And what, Mike?" "She was stabbing herself in the stomach." He was shaking. Not the normal nervous shake. No, he was shaking like a man who had just seen a ghost. "What did you do then, buddy?" I asked, trying to coax more of the story out. "I grabbed her, tried to stop her. I tried to talk to her, but she was just mumbling the same thing. It was like I wasn't even there. I reached for the knife and she cut me. Here." He pulled up his sleeve and showed me the scar down his forearm. She took the damn knife and cut her own wrist. She started licking, drinking her own blood. She was smiling while she did it." The attorney part of Stan took control of my mind and asked him to continue. "I got her to stop. God, there was so much blood. I took her and placed her in our bed. I bandaged her up, and the whole time she babbled, saying some weird stuff, Stan. She didn't even look like Katie. Her eyes were different. Damn evil. I didn't know what else to do, Stan. I strapped her down in the bed and watched her. She just stared at me with black eyes, saying the same thing over and over again in that voice. I have no idea what she was trying to say, but it sounded like this. Ferio canis experimus mea. I heard it enough that night. I think that's what it was. The voice sounded like pure evil." I slid my chair around the table and right next to him, placing my hand on his shoulder. Maybe he was crazy, but he was still my friend. If there was any possible way of defending him, I needed the entire story now. I guess I drifted off in the early morning hours. Man, I just had enough. Then I woke up to her, that voice talking even louder. I looked up, and she was in my face. But she was hanging off the ceiling. I honestly still didn't know what to make of all I was hearing, but I was already too far down the rabbit hole. I asked him the only thing I didn't want to hear. "So, how did you do it?" "I didn't. She came down and sat on the bed. She was still chanting or whatever, looked me in the eyes, and grabbed her own head. She twisted it all the way around, talking and laughing. I mean, she broke her own damn neck. I could hear it happen right in front of me. So, here we were. That place I had tried so hard to avoid. I thought maybe he was in fact crazy. Regardless, I was ready to get out of there. I don't think that I believed him, but I heard these words coming out of my mouth. Mike, if you're telling me the truth, this could change the entire thing. Do you understand? Do you want to plead not guilty? But I'll tell you right now, if you do, you gotta drop the weird stuff from the story, okay? His eyes shifted all over my face, nervously. What's the quickest way for this all to end, Stan? I don't care about prison. I just want to get it over with. That was probably the toughest question of my career. I didn't want him to burn for something he didn't even do. It might work, I told myself. As strange as his story was, it would have been enough to work with during the trial. But I already knew the answer to his question. It's the plea deal, Mike. I slid the paper in front of him. Everything was filled out except his name. He held his hand up, and I placed the pen in his palm. Mike looked up right before signing it, and his face turned eerily pale. His lips began to quiver uncontrollably. I thought maybe he was accepting the fact that he was signing his own life away, but he pointed to the door and told me, Look, those eyes. I turned to look at whatever he saw, but saw nothing. It was only the guard, looking into the small window on the door. As I turned my head back to Mike, I felt something wet squirt the side of my neck and face. He had taken my pen and stabbed it through his own throat. Blood was spewing out as he was gurgling. As I tried to stop him, he just stared over my shoulder at the door. I turned to look again at the door, and the guard was still standing there, watching him through the window, doing nothing. Except that time, I did see his eyes.